Deepesh is CIO of Montefiore Health Systems and Einstein College of Medicine. Like some of the others on the panel, he's been we had the privilege of being a partner for him over multiple parts of his journey, and he's done incredible work at Mount Sinai many years ago. And then since then, we met when he was during his McKinsey days, where he was advising several healthcare systems nationally, probably even globally. And then his stint at Bon Secours Mercy in Cincinnati. And that's where we really got time to spend together and picked up this, the good habit of doing fireside chat with the drink of that region, if you will. And then in addition to H2O. And then most recently, he's now he's decided to continue to his journey to invest and transform healthcare. So I want to welcome Deepesh to the stage and kick off with a simple question. What does a modern CIO, when he looks at something as, we had several talks today on finance, and the prevailing wisdom is that finance is actually a lot easier to change than healthcare, and I would love to hear your perspective.
Great, thank you. Thanks, Sri. I think I have the privilege of knowing H2O for over 10 years at this point, and I think every version of a water analogy that you use in your product, I've seen it evolve over a period of time when it was just water and it became steam and everything else. But no, it's
sparkling water.
Yes, sparkling water and everything. I've seen it, and every time Sri would launch a new product, I will shake my head saying, you know. But anyway, it has been an absolute pleasure seeing H2O grow over the many years. And one thing that has remained consistent from H2O is their mission to democratize AI, and it shows into their product. And I have been just delighted in bringing their innovation into healthcare and how we deliver some of the use cases within healthcare space. To answer Sri your question about kind of how do CIOs think the path forward, our industry, if for those who don't know healthcare well enough, you should know it's one of the biggest industry by the amount of money we spend. In US, we are 1/5 of the total GDP that US spends. In terms of a technology spend overall across medical devices, investment that goes into pharmaceuticals, all this kind of technologies that get used, it's one of the heaviest spender of technology overall. As new technology become available, whether it is from a compute perspective or from a perspective of use of AI and machine learning, in pushing the medical science forward, in finding new drugs, in finding new therapies, making medicine safe, a lot goes into that, and it requires a very different type of a skill set, a very different type of mindset to work in this space. So it's a very, very exciting industry. And I think I work on the care delivery side, which is hospitals, where you care for the patients when you are at your most vulnerable point, and the technology simply has to work in that moment. If the technology doesn't work, the consequence can be pretty severe, as you can imagine. So the fail-safe is really, really important. And that translates into all things when we are looking at things around AI and use of data in treating our patients, in delivering the care very well. This is an industry which is very eager to adopt, but also this fail-safe mechanism comes into the mix. I'll leave you with this example, and we should move on to the next question. There are interesting use cases being discussed where we are beginning to shake things like stethoscope, which is known as a symbol for the doctors. There are technologies right now where we can now replace the stethoscopes that doctors use by a piece of medical hardware that can be put on your body and connected to your phone. With assisted AI, it can start picking up things that a simple stethoscope cannot pick it up. So a point of care testing goes 10x, 100x by a combination of advancement in medical devices plus artificial intelligence, things that you can do on the edge, things you can do on the cloud in sub-second latency while the doctor is treating a patient. This is real. And we are just simply very, very excited with what future lies ahead of us in healthcare and how it can fundamentally change how we deliver care in a daily basis.
Picking off of that, I remember one of the, Deepesh is, like one of our previous other panelists, prone to saying things that are reasonably like blunt and bold, right? Sort of one of the most recent good ones I heard was AI is not the biggest invention of the last year, not Gen AI by a long stretch, but fill up the blank.
Um, Shri and I debate about this a lot. So I am a trained data scientist. I like to believe that AI is the biggest invention of today's time, but it is not. It is GLP-1 drugs. And what's gonna get started by the momentum that GLP-1 drugs have built, it has a fundamental force to change the society as we know it. And I think there is a lot of research going in this space, almost 5x, 10x from the level of what RNA medicine did with COVID vaccine and such. GLP-1 is, in my opinion, the most revolutionary technology of our time. I'm sure AI will have its role to play in making this medicine more accessible, more safe for humankind, more applicable. But I still think that we are living with two technologies of our time that will just change our generation.
I tend to totally agree with that. I think the Nobel Prize award for AlphaFold kind of goes to say that they're really kind of head-to-head on this topic. But GLP-1 has an opportunity to transform. I mean, the impact of that has been, maybe for folks who want to kind of maybe break it down, why sort of.
Yeah, so I think for those, and I'm not a medicine expert by any mean, but one of the biggest thing that a GLP-1 drug does is it intercepts the brain, the signal that your body sends to your brain, primarily that is connected to a craving. This leads to a lot of signals, combination of protein reactions, enzyme reactions that happens in your body. For example, if you're getting hungry, there are series and chains of events that happens in your body that tells your brain that you need to eat. If you're going to get a craving to smoke, if you're going to get a craving to drink, if you're going to get any craving, there is a way in which your body works. The fundamental principle of this medicine and this technology is to intercept that signal and in some ways redirect it, mute it, do whatever you can. That's why it's GLP-1. I'm sure there will be other GLPs that will come. But its ability to intercept these signals, the brain, is amazing.
Yeah, I mean, people have now found it can reduce dementia to kind of the impacts. Just like not like just still they're still discovering what all it can solve, right? So, going to a different topic, what are some? I know through your not just the current, but at BSMH, where you rolled out AI as CDAO across a whole hospital system. Some of the systems you left behind are still in production running and saving millions of dollars for them. But actually, maybe it might be worthwhile just to bring the audience back to some simple use cases that led.
Happy to. Look, when you look for opportunities in healthcare, and especially on the care delivery side, if you think about where the healthcare cost is spent the most, today there are two biggest players, hospital system and the insurance companies, the payers and the providers. Among these two, there is a very easy 20 to 25% of their entire cost base gets spent on administrative things. They vary from filling bunch of forms and following the processes and checking boxes, making payments, doing adjudications and whatnot. This is an enormous cost base. So when every time we think about why my insurance policy is getting expensive, why my healthcare is going up, there is a contribution that is these administrative tasks are contributing to. We have seen significantly that how the new generation of AI-based technologies can begin to reduce that administrative burden significantly. So if you think about, a $2 trillion industry today, a 25% cost burden, you can do the math, it's about 500 billion that we spend today just on administrative burden. There is, in most places, wherever there is a large hospital, there is a large insurance company who have their headquarters, they tend to be the biggest employer in their neighborhood. If you just did a math of looking at who is the largest employer in a given state, it's a very good chance that the top three will be healthcare companies. And so they employ a lot of people, not just medical professionals. They employ a lot of people. A lot of these people go into the administrative task. So the opportunity that is lying in front of us is, are there opportunities where some of these tasks that might be extremely manual in nature could be displaced by an agent-based machine or purely machine-based learning. So to Sri's example, in my previous organization, one of the things that we deployed by combining a couple of technology, both from AI perspective as well as an automation-based technology, we combined two technologies to solve a specific workflow where there are millions of invoices coming in that needed to be paid. Healthcare is a very complex organization when it comes to the vendors that we use, and they need to be paid. They don't follow. There are invoices that are handwritten to invoices that are printed in different formats to whatnot. Just the human labor that we had to apply to pay these invoices is significant. So in a simple use case, working with H2O, we built a pipeline that would look at all these invoices and will match it to the agreed contract and make the payment happen automatically. Sounds simple, but it's extremely complicated in a healthcare situation for us. And so we use Document AI. I think we were among the first customer when it came out. We were definitely the first one to use in healthcare, and we automated the heck out of the entire process. Like the entire account payable pipeline was fully automated, and thousands of hours of human labor was saved, not to mention that we had a massive backlog of invoices and vendors were not getting paid, and you could now have an AI just pick up the workload and process it instantaneously. So it was, it's a back-end unsexy use case, but we saw a massive uplift in the value we could bring.
No, thank you for that. We tried to bring Kapila. I think she went to India, so thank you for telling that story, and hopefully we will roll it out in an organization soon. What would what are typical challenges of bringing AI into the healthcare? Some of my partners are in the audience. They are also trying to, between going to a bank versus going to a hospital, you're trying to make this call. What are the biggest challenges when they try to come and talk to the CIO of a large healthcare organization? What shouldn't they do?
I think you should look at this from the lens of a highly regulated industry. So healthcare is, as you know, like other industries, heavily regulated. So one of the biggest tripwire in the industry is the use of the data. And if you're going to use anything that is healthcare data, where it is an identifiable information about an individual, about their healthcare information. Um, there are rules in this country that are extremely strict around privacy, and as they should be. Um, so your ability to bring in AI in a very responsible way that builds the trust that how the data would get used and the output that you're going to produce, what are the fail-safe mechanism built into that? If you have good understanding of it and a deep respect of how that would work in the ecosystem, I think you will find the conversation a lot more easier. We find it very difficult when people are trying to come with novel ideas and their interests are in the right place, but they have a complete misunderstanding of what environment are you walking into and what's the reality of the industry is. I think that de-link in people's mind is makes it challenging. So my advice is often is spend some time to learn the industry before you start using AI in that. It's very contextual, and just understand what are the rules and laws and everything that are important for us.
Going back probably 4 or 5 years at McKinsey itself, you had the reverse situation where you were approaching these institutions with a transformative. I think you mean some major organizations like 8, 9, others were completely changed during that time. What did you kind of do right there that can be picked up as well, maybe the other side?
Yeah, so I take a lot of pride in working with a number of governments across the world as I was doing the advisory work and with some of the biggest logos in our industry. What I enjoyed the most was how to help some of these organizations, especially the government, um, build the right structural framework so that they can do AI in a better way. So, for example, how you should open up your data set so any AI can come in and plug it in. How you need to have checks and balances, what kind of governance structures you need in the place, how would you audit what kind of AIs are running in your ecosystem and such. And this has been a learning curve for the organization. 10 years ago, people will just say simply no. And 5 years ago, people started understanding that this is how we need to do it. And I think COVID changed a lot of things for us. It opened a lot of people to a lot of ideas like this. And now we see a point where majority of the players in the industry are embracing the idea because of all the structural elements that have gone in past. And we find that a lot of executives today in healthcare are a lot more informed about it. A lot of board members are informed about it, which helps the executive kind of push these things through forward, which wasn't the case 5 years ago.
A lot more pull, not push, actually, which is kind of the biggest one. This stage is the Mariam Curie stage, both of whom, actually Mary Curie and of course Mariam Mirzakhani, mathematicians, first Fields medalists and first Nobel Prize winners in science, women winners, both were taken away by cancer. We started the company because my mom was inflicted by cancer, breast cancer, and how should an oncologist use AI today, or how should we approach a problem as tricky and difficult? And it's not for the lack of investment. It's probably one of the most invested disease vector that has been chased. What are some thoughts you might want to give us?
Um, there are many areas where we can go, but let me just try to distill this in 2 or 3 buckets. I think there is an area of continuing to push medical science where we can manage cancer like a flu. I'm hopeful that it will happen within our generation. Uh, that requires, and if you work with or see or watch any documentary around how cancer scientists work on finding the next immunotherapy or any kind of medicine, you will be amazed the amount of artificial intelligence that goes into it. the amount of compute power that goes into it. Very early in my career, I worked on personalized medicine where we would take the entire genome sequence of a individual patients that would generate one genome sequence at that time was generating 250 terabytes worth of data set. I'm talking 15 years ago. And we had to pin that entire data set on a high performance computing machine that was running 25,000 cores. And we would run one simulation that would take 8, 9 hours. I'm not saying it was the best scenario, but we were building personalized medicine in a way where we can tune a certain drug to an individual patient. That was happening 15, 20 years ago. Today, most of these things happen on cloud. You can burst high performance compute, you can run large simulation model, you can run thousands of simulation at once, you can do a lot of protein folding algorithms and such. AI is beginning to help push the drug through the discovery into development to trial phase very, very fast. And I think if we get our hold around cancer, I think AI is going to play a very, very significant role, one way or the other way. I think that's one side of um, cancer care. The other side of cancer care is the things that happens in the hospital or when you have a newly diagnosed patient. We are seeing AI being extensively being used in high density imaging where you are picking up tumors, where you are trying to do rendering of a tumor in a very complex body space where a tumor might be tied between several tissues. And the way AI can render these images is just fascinating. It was not there like 3 years ago. And so you have to see these signs to just be fascinated about where these things are going, especially in the cases where artificial intelligence is beginning to pick up things that a very trained medical doctor would miss. And it's happening at a very, very rapid scale. Most of the mammography machines are now getting powered with AI, so they are picking up things that would generally not, a radiologist wouldn't pick up. That's happening in the second bucket of like point of care. The third space, which is right now still unexplored, and I'm sure someone somewhere is working on these things, is when this disease happens to someone, it is an emotional trauma, but at the same time, the amount of information that comes to you at the pace, it is extremely difficult for you to process. And we hear it from our patients where you might be awake 2 o'clock in the night trying to Google something and trying to find an information. That information, getting put together and understood in a way that it is responsible is still not there. Mayo Clinic and Google have done this for last 8 or 10 years, where they have tried to assemble a lot of information about any disease category. So you're not looking at stupid things on WebMD, where everything you have a rash and WebMD is telling you that it's a cancer. So, I think Google and Mayo Clinic have done a tremendous job in putting the right medical information out. So today, if you do Google search, most of the results that you see on the top comes back from Mayo Clinic's information. I think that was generation one. The next generation, which I think where a lot of RAG-based models are coming in, I think you will see a curve of work happening where this information will get packaged for the patients in an English that they can understand. And I think that will be something that Shri and I were actually sitting in a bar, and I gave a PDF of a drug named Keytruda. It's a very famous drug to treat cancer. It's a billion-dollar drug. And I asked Shri that, can you find any information? He immediately loaded that PDF into his tool, and we started asking question, if I am a diabetic patient and I have a cancer, what would be the side reaction of a Keytruda? And so, he did that while on a laptop sitting on a bar. The reality is we did that 1 year ago, and till today, there is no tool who can do that in a public forum yet. So I think this third bucket is really important, that how do we bring all this information that we have about cancer care, the therapies, the drugs, the side reaction, the emotional reaction, how do you package this and bring it? I think AI is in a very unique position to synthesize that information for normal human being. I see that as the biggest impact of AI as of today. I think protein analysis and those things will happen. I think doctors will take care of the patients, that will happen. But the third bucket is probably the most important one.
The human aspect. What most people who come to healthcare, right? They come with a mission, and obviously, once they join healthcare, they get consumed by the machine of health system being too complex and complicated and sophisticated. A lot of young kids in the audience, most of them trying to learn and get into schools. What would you kind of give them as point of direction, as well as confidence, guardrails to keep, so they can continue to stay inspired while in healthcare?
I suggest that I think if you have the opportunity, go work for healthcare institutions. Um, there are 3 or 4 sides of healthcare, but I say the one to definitely work for is a health system, or if you can't work for a health system, work for a pharmaco, especially on the disease discovery side. I think spending some time, you will learn a lot of things, just from an opportunity perspective, but also how to apply AI in a highly regulated industry. Uh, you know, Probably spend 2, 3 years of your career, if you are early enough in your career, to make that as a fungible investment on your side. That's my recommendation all the time. And quite honestly, we can use some good talent. It's not the sexiest of the industry. Everybody wants to work for Wall Street. I don't blame them, but there is the industry can use some good talent. So
AI talent as well, as you
yes,
rightly.
absolutely. It's very hard for us to attract good talent. And so I do recommend everyone to just bring your energy into healthcare. I think we can all use it.
Well, health is the only wealth in many ways. I think there's a few different directions careers can fall. And a few years ago, you yourself getting pulled into, I mean, there's a lot of, I would say, private equity in healthcare, right? Sort of kind of they talk about the things that are going well and things that kind of taking it in a very different direction, if you will. How is that playing out with PE, and how can AI help kind of reduce the bottom line or the asset heaviness of healthcare?
I think, look, there is, and I'm not saying work in healthcare only for the nobility of it. As you said, I spend a lot of time in helping companies that are often private equity backed, that are trying to see a little bit around the curve. Healthcare is a slow industry for a very good reason. You don't want this industry to move very fast. People's life are at stake. So it generally is a very defensive industry, which means that changes don't occur in a matter of months. It takes a few years. But if you look a span of 3 to 5 years, the industry has moved in many ways. The interesting part is there is a subsector within healthcare which is often, motivated and invested significantly by private equity. Healthcare industry is, I think, for last 10 years, health tech has been the number one investment area for most of the private equity around the country, if my stats are right. So there is a lot of money that flows into healthcare. So you will find, a mini Silicon Valley in Nashville and Austin and some of these big healthcare hubs where large health tech companies are well-funded health tech companies are there. I think the interesting work there is they look at different slivers of friction of the problems in the industry, and they bring the full force of their creative thinking, the capital dollars, the use of technology to go solve that problem. And it gives me a very unique lens as to what's about to happen more broadly in healthcare. And I've seen that story play a dozen of times, where something that sparked in a corner in a health tech company sort of started, and that carried forward and became a thing across the industry very, very quickly. So I think that's definitely. So if you don't want to work for a health system, go work for a private equity backed companies as well in healthcare. You will have fun.
You'll see a different perspective of that. Taking the question a little inward towards H2O, how can we, through the various, I remember the first time meeting you not far from here and in your offices in McKinsey, and sparkling water, I think we were deploying, and you had all these data sets, and how we served you then versus when we both struck up in Bon Secours, where you ended up actually being an investor. And then now, how can we serve you better now as a CIO overseeing a very large organization, healthcare organization? What's missing?
I don't know what's missing, but I can tell you this, that where I see from my landscape is the convergence of multiple technologies coming together that creates a very compounding impact for us. So we were talking earlier things around supply chain, and we packaged the power of document AI along with an automation tool to deliver something very impactful. That was 5 years ago. Today, we already have agent-based technology that can take care of tasks. You don't need the automation wrap around that. So one of the things that we get very interested about is, how do I combine 3 or 4 technologies to really move the needle very fast? And I'll give you an example of how we are beginning to look at this. Just a couple of weeks ago, we deployed ambient listening technology within our primary care clinic. So if you ever have visited a doctor, you will see that most of the time the doctor is typing on a computer, not even looking at you. And they do that because they need to get paid, and for them to get paid, they need to document things. And now that a lot of our ambient listening based technologies have become better, when we deployed this, we found that their documentation burden dropped by 90%. But in order for us to do that, there were a lot of structural things we had to change in some of these offices. We found that in order for these technologies to work, we had to provide mobile phone that is safe and secure for patient data set. We needed to have a much better Wi-Fi connection because you're streaming data and getting information back. We saw so many structural pieces that were missing for us to deploy AI in an exam room in the middle of a 40-story building. So then we had to combine the power of 5Gs because we can't break the wall. We had to deploy 5G, to deploy a few other pieces of technology. And then when we saw this, the adoption was really high, and we have been seeing a significant adoption in that technology. But we are constantly seeing that it's not one technology that moves the needle for us. How do we bring all the needed technology together to deploy that? So every time you are thinking about something, if you flip the equation that how is the industry really going to use this piece of technology, you are going to find from a lens of a CIO that I always have to think the combination and the building blocks that has to come together. So if your technology is too disjointed, like an ambient listening technology, I can't deploy it because I don't have the structural pieces in place. So that's always is the problem. So when you think about and flip it from the eyes of a customer, and you really want to scale it, you have to meet us where we are. What is the structural pieces that has to come together? Maybe you are not the one deploying it. Maybe it's a combination of Dell and NVIDIA and whoever has to come together and kind of do that. piece for us.
The
I think
holistic,
that convergence is really important for us.
it's a holistic ecosystem play. Phenomenal. I think, I mean, some incredible conversations. Hopefully, there was a recording of some of the responses, especially the one around cancer. It's just golden words there. As always, Deepesh brings the depth out of experience and wisdom. So, thank you so much for joining us today. I know there's a AI 100 award as well. I know audience is here. We probably have a few minutes for any questions. So, Preeti.
Deepesh, thank you so much. I think healthcare is one of the areas that really has the power to change the way we work and adopt AI. I want to ask a question and maybe pivoting from where innovation and the talks that you talked about drug discovery, elements of where. Thank you so much. This will help. I want to turn onto the side where a lot of innovation and the technology that is being using AI or generative AI, how do you ensure or what approaches are you using where different ethnicities of human race are being used so that when these technologies are coming and interacting with different parts of the world or even over here, like we have a diverse group of people, how do you ensure? And also, when companies are using these third-party solutions or technologies that are supporting healthcare system, what should they be putting in place that they get the assurance that yes, they are transparent, and you talked about the responsible and the safety-driven approaches. So can you shine some light on those, and maybe you've adopted some approaches?
It is very interesting topic, and that's the part that is concerning right now. Is the oversampling and undersampling that's get inadvertently introduced in these models. People do not realize it, but the more complex things you begin to solve in healthcare, your sample size dramatically drops, right? So, and if you're trying to treat cancer with AI, there is less than 0.1% population that is affected by it. So this is where it becomes really complicated as to how you're using the data. And there are a lot of structural guide rails that are being built from a governance perspective. This is also one area where we are beginning to see where regulation is now coming faster than it has ever been with any other technology. And I joke about this thing that US innovates and EU regulates. But one of the things that came out from EU is around some of these topics that we are hopeful that there are some proposals coming out from FDA, NIH-funded grants and such, but particularly FDA, that FDA is beginning to approve AI models that are going to be applicable for clinical care. So I think there are about 24 models, maybe the counts keep going up. But if you believe it or not, just like drugs, FDA is approving AI models. And they are looking at clinical trial data to approve whether or not this AI is to be used in a clinical care setting or not. There have been some concept being thrown around with the use of nutritional label type of a logic for AI models in healthcare. So there are 5 or 6 dimensions of a good AI model, and now we are beginning to, play around with this concept of nutrition label if on AI in healthcare. So time will tell, but this is where consortiums, governments, and others are increasingly bring things out. But I am, from my vantage point, I'm living in an era where there are no regulation. There's a lot of AI. How do I protect my organization and my patients? So we are trying to navigate that the best we can, but we are hoping that there will be more structural guidelines that will come very quickly in this space.
One of the interesting aspect of FDA-approved software is when I first wrote the first generalized linear method, we took it straight to UCSF, and they basically said, we can't use it. It's FDA is not approved open source models back then. So, and then I had to write to the founders of R, and they gave me a big book of how to get it approved. And turns out you need multiple years of tests online that this model is actually accurate. And so since that point on, all H2O models, our tests are public and open, including what you saw with Gaia benchmark is actually open. So keeping them publicly tested is actually one of the guidelines for FDA approval.
I think if you are interested in this space, ARPA, who invented internet, ARPA has a special division called ARPA-H that is focused just on healthcare. And it gives out large grant dollars for use of technology and other things in healthcare. They just released a grant called Precise AI. So ARPA-H has I think, $50 or $60 million grant that they released called Precise AI, which is trying to target model drift. It is that specific. So how do we build right measures and tools that will capture model drift in healthcare setting? And they're giving out enough dollars out for this innovation so we could have a national standard around model drift in healthcare. So I'm very encouraged by where government is beginning to spend this money. And so unlike EU's approach on here's a big binder of regulation, I think ARPA-H is doing some amazing things in bringing private sector together to self-regulate and spend money in the right area.
They just released one in agentic AI. I think the team submitted one 2 days ago. Pretty advanced, and especially healthcare demands that precision, right? So, I thought you also asked a question about languages, right? So, I mean, I remember you mentioning Montefiore serves like 60 languages or more.
We have 30 official languages.
In New York City, right? So it's a very, very multilingual. Sorry. Yeah.
So Deepesh, you talk about the area where people might be working on the people have a disease and they research, and I have seen like when you go to physicians say you have researched more than me. So I see lots of competition, like I'm talking about not the specialist, but journal doctors or primary physician. So why can't AI be replacing primary physicians now with so much technology data available? Why doctor feels like I would be better judge than your internet or ChatGPT?
The reality is AI can replace them. I think, is the society ready to be treated by an AI? If you are in your most vulnerable moment, you're sick, you can't get out of the bed, would you trust an AI to write you a prescription, and would you take the prescription that AI gave you? Maybe, if you're bold enough to do it. I think as a society, we have to build our confidence when it comes to our care, healthcare in particular. But I think your question goes a little deeper, is as an industry, we haven't figured out who bears the risk of something going wrong. That's a question also exists with autonomous vehicle today, that if a AI algorithm is driving your car, the driver is still responsible. And I think as a society, as regulators, we haven't solved that question, who bears the risk. I think the day we solve that, I think we'll be fine. If OpenAI underwrites all medical malpractices, I think we'll be okay. But I don't know. Until that day comes, um, I think we won't be able to replace. It will always be a AI-assisted doctor. Um, but hopefully someday we'll solve who carries the risk.
Yeah, Professor or Dr. Devi Shetty visited us in 2015 before he IPO'd his hospital system out of Bangalore. And he was one of the ones who literally challenged us to do the first level diagnosis in a way that you can read all the signs and symptoms and all the possible disease and see if you can give A, B, C, D. And at least make sure that he envisioned a time in the future, which hasn't happened yet, where doctors are prohibited from making the diagnosis without asking AI. And I think that's probably still 4 or 5 years away.